Hello, hi, Sai.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Yeah, fine, doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. What's your name?
Sai.
Your name?
Yeah, Sai.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, can you tell about yourself and current project and your roles and responsibilities?
Okay. I'm posted developer too. I have 4 years experience. I'm an NIT Warangal graduate. I have experience in Java, Python, Spring Boot, React, Angular, and I also worked on setting up an Elasticsearch engine. And I also have experience with working with AI agents. I created workflows. I used the RAG for automating the payment repair. I'm basically from a payments platform in the bank, BNB, Bank of New York. So I have worked on automation using agents for the payment repair flow. And my responsibilities will be including like we have agile ceremonies. So we at the start of ceremony we start from the sprint refinement. We uh, refine the stories, have the story pointed, take them into the sprint, then work, and I also help in reviewing the my peers and juniors merge request, and then we take to production. And if some bugs, production issues comes up, then I'll support them too, and also participate in design discussions. Basically, this is my role.
Okay. So, to design a RESTful microservice using Spring Boot, okay, that must handle high concurrency and integrate with external payment API. What architectural and design choices would you make to ensure scalability, fault tolerance, and maintainability?
Okay. So I use JWT token for authentication because that is stateless. That would be help in the horizontal scaling of microservices. Um, and I will use a load balancer um, between multiple horizontal microservices. And whenever a payment request comes up, instead of processing it asynchronously, I will have a message queue, um, store them in that, and I'll have the consumer shops which will be consuming them one by one. And this way, even if the load spikes up suddenly, also we can observe it.
Okay, what about external payment API?
External API also same thing. I That might take some time for the response. I mean, for the payment to be success or failure, right? So I would process that too asynchronously. We'll trigger it, and periodically I can keep checking, or if it can push to, if the payment system supports pushing the success or failure to our system, that would be even better. And I've used Saga pattern here because payment, if it fails, I can revert it and make changes. That way it would be atomic transaction.
Okay, so you know about Kubernetes, right?
Kubernetes, I'm aware, but I didn't. We have pipelines which automatically build. I didn't do any Kubernetes setup systems. I
Okay,
work in
you
an
have the
environment where we
understanding,
have.
right, about it.
Yeah, I have basic understanding.
Okay, so if you have a Kubernetes cluster nodes are running out of disk space, okay, so due to large container logs, okay, how would you address this issue and implement measures to prevent it from reoccurring?
Well, I would have the proper monitoring like Prometheus, OpenTelemetry, and have alert set up before it happens. Only if it hits a limit, we should be aware of it and getting the alerts. And check the logs, what is happening. Maybe the threads are unavailable or memory is getting filled up. I'll check that.
Okay. Can you share your screen?
Is my screen visible?
Yeah. So you need to develop an REST API that manages to-do list with create, update, delete, and list endpoints. Then implement an Angular JS component to fetch, display the to-do items. Provide user actions to add, edit, remove. Ensure data stays in sync between the client and server.
Okay. Client and server, it has to be synced, then we should have a long polling or simple polling with less frequency. We can do WebSockets, but I think that would be an overkill here. So
Okay.
start with the endpoints. I'll open my ID.
Just the methods is fine, not overall the code class and all.
Okay. So should I open my ID and start typing?
Yeah, right. That is fine.
Here, return a list of to-dos. It will return all the to-dos, but to return a particular to-do, I'll take an ID of it. written 200 responses if it is success. You want me to model the total class also? What details it should have?
Yeah, right.
Is this sufficient? Or are you expecting any more features in the tool?
Yeah, that is fine.
Now the getter setters. I'm not going to write it. And the repository, can I mimic using a in-memory list here? I can store the to-dos here itself and do the upload.
Okay.
I need to construct waste injection. I usually write a Lombok required as construct. That would take care of the beans injection.
Okay.
I'll just go through the list and get the ID of the to-do where it is present, where the ID is matching, and I will update that with this to-do. Should I write pseudocode or should I write load code?
Yeah,
How much time
pseudocode
do we
is
have?
fine.
Same, I'll get the to-do which is matching the ID, its position, and then I will remove that to-do in this folder. Okay. So I have one endpoint to get all the to-dos, one to get a particular to-do by the ID, and this is post mapping to create a to-do. This is to edit a to-do by ID. We'll give the ID and the updated to-do. And for deleting, we'll give the ID. I didn't cover the exception handling all those due to limited time.
Okay. Okay. Can you copy paste this code in the code editor?
Where is code editor?
I have enabled it.
Okay.
How about Angular component?
Okay. Let me use copy this one. For Angular, we in our company we have AG grid. We for any such table, such things, we use AG grid. We define the columns mapping. Then at the ng on init, we'll call the get API, get all the to-dos, and give the list reference to the AG grid component. And for every action, we'll call the respect to, like if you want to delete it, we'll call the fetch delete endpoint by give passing the string, I mean ID, or for updating same thing ID, I'm giving the to do this.
Can you write the sample code for it?
Okay. Use the same AJ grid component here also.
Yeah, no problem. You can use the compiler or online ID. You can use the ID also.
No, I mean AJ grid for displaying the table. Can I use that?
Yeah,
That's
you
what I've
can
been
use.
using in my company. But still define columns. Column name should be ID, and in the JSON also I'm expecting the same ID only. What else we have? Task name, right? We'll have a service component here also in the Angular, and I'll make all the endpoint calls in the service. So here I'll just invoke the initially it would be empty. Then after enjoying it, or once component loads, it will make the get all API call to fetch all the to-do list and populate here. This will have AG grid has some callbacks for each action. Don't remember the syntax of it. For each callback, like suppose if we define action button, if the action has edit and delete, for each one respectively, again in the to-do service, I have to do the call like a to. Sorry, in the to-do service, I have each method like so in the to-do service, which
Okay. Mm, mm. So you need to make an API call, right? Where is the
right,
table?
defining those API calls in the to-do service, all the API calls.
Mm,
Those API calls would be called through the AG grid callback. So whenever action performs, it,
mm.
but the fetch all would be called on the component initialization itself. The remaining would be called on the whenever that respective action is taken by the user using the callbacks.
How about edit, delete?
For the edit delete, AG grid has a inbuilt callbacks. Suppose I can define actions and have a component for action. So when that button is clicked, I will call the fetch.edit and I'll pass the JSON.
You need to have the APIs for the delete also, right? You have written in the backend. You need to call the respective API when you click on the
Yes,
button also, right?
yes, in the to-do service itself, in the you also have a to-do service. Then itself, I'll define all the four endpoints here,
Okay.
and those endpoints I'll be calling whenever the user action performs edit, delete, or add to do.
Okay. Okay, that is fine. Copy. Okay, that is fine. So describe how would you handle a situation where a team member frequently misunderstood the verbal instructions, resulting into repeated mistakes. Okay. What steps would you take to improve communication and outcomes?
It will happen frequently before escalating or before taking it harshly. I will just have a casual talk with them in a friendly manner and give constructive feedback. And as you said, it is happening due to verbal miscommunications frequently. I would suggest documenting. I would suggest our team to document our actions, our plans, what we're going to do. That way, we can all be on the same page. We can refer to the, or maybe I will have a conference page. There we can document whatever we have discussed. And after every meeting, we can have the mom written minutes of meeting written and
Okay.
just talk them in the give a constructive feedback and encourage them to go through the uh, task to do or conflict is what we written, whatever our next action is. And I'll also encourage our team to define the stories, the description, acceptance criteria properly in the in the Jira ticket. That way, there wouldn't be any confusions.
Mhm. So describe how would you approach implementing complex reusable form validation logic across multiple components in a large AngularJS application. What architectural patterns or Angular JS features would you leverage?
Uh, um, the
So,
large Angular
how
bridge,
would
we have
you
to.
approach implementing
Hmm.
a complex, reusable form validation logic across multiple components in large scale Angular JS application? Okay. What architectural patterns or Angular JS features would you leverage?
Okay. I expected this in the form validation. There were some custom validations where we had to make sure the amount is. It's not like simple greater than less than. There were some specific conditions. I wrote a callback function, I believe. It was I gave for the component gave that function pass data so that it could do validations. I don't remember the name of it. I can have it in a common service and maybe reuse it the same thing instead of writing it every time. I can't. I don't remember what it is called, but that's what I did.
Okay. So how would you refactor a legacy Java application that uses extensive inheritance to improve maintainability and support new business requirements? Describe your approach and any desired patterns would you apply?
Okay, I would follow the solid principles. So whenever I'm starting a new project or making the refactoring, so if I create a new component, I'll make sure it handles only single responsibilities. I'll make sure it supports extensible. I mean, it is like open close, so it is open for extension. Um, what I would do is I'll leverage the inheritance. If we have some implementation, I'll instead of writing a new class, I can extend the same base class and have a different implementation for it. And for the patterns, if we have to do same thing in different ways, I can maybe use strategy pattern. And if based on a certain condition, we have to use a certain set of classes. I'll use factory pattern. And what else was the question?
Yeah, that is the only thing. Okay, fine, that is fine. How would you design a Java microservice to handle high traffic, ensuring scalability and reliability? What Java framework patterns and deployment strategies would you use? How would you monitor and maintain the service?
So bulkhead pattern, each microservice having a separate database, both and mm, each service being independent. And for monitoring purpose, I will set up the Splunk logs, Prometheus, and Open Telemetry. Will have the trace IDs whenever an exception happens. I'll use a trace ID to trace from where it is occurring and reproduce the same in the local. And to ensure a proper reliability, I will use circuit breakers. Some service is down. Instead of still taking a request to it and bombarding it, I'll just stop it. And I'll have heartbeats to check if the service is up or down. And reliability. For reliability, I'll have replicas for the even for the database or for the distributed caches. So suppose if the master dies, then the other followers, the slaves would become the leader. I would use that. So if some node dies, we can still have reliability. And for the particular microservices, I have multiple instances and have a load balancer. If one microservice dies, then other microservice can same microservice with the multiple instances can handle it. And for messages, I will try to decouple the services using Kafka message queues. For Kafka has a good advantage. The messages are persisted into the disk. So even if the Kafka node dies, we can still restart. The consumer would be tracking the offset from where it stopped. So we can restart from the same position again.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any questions to me?
Um, I mean, what is my job role involved here? Which team I will be working on? How does a daily day-to-day work looks like here?
Yeah, it's based on the project, whatever you have been allocated.
Mhm.
See, once you have selected, based on the product allocation, you will be assigning a task and accordingly you will be working on the respective product.
Okay.
So once the next process or next rounds of interviews, after selection, you will be coming to know. Any questions apart from that?
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Bye bye.
Thank you.